You inspire us, Mayor Dukevich, with your vision and with the energy of this city. When we talked last year about the timing this year, we were debating about whether it was appropriate or whether it would be a problem to organize this around the 25th anniversary celebrations of Polish democracy. We decided it was absolutely the right thing to do. What we couldn't have foreseen is the brutality of Russia in the meantime. What we also couldn't have foreseen that this would be bookended by the 25th anniversary celebrations, including the visit of President Obama to Warsaw, and then the inauguration of the democratically elected President Poroshenko in Kiev. But on the other hand, this underscores how important it is to bring together a lasting and ongoing community of influence for all eventualities. What galvanizes and supports the Atlantic Council is a compelling mission that in past weeks has turned more urgent. I hope when you go home, and even years from this event, you will remember that you heard at the Wroclaw Global Forum that 2014 was an inflection point in history when the transatlantic community had to go back on the initiative for a Europe whole and free. That's really what I've heard this year in the various panels. We at the Atlantic Council believe that this inflection point could be decisive. Decisive perhaps similarly to the years 1919, 1945, 1989, when the actions of US leaders and their allies shaped the global system or alternatively failed to do so. If we're lucky, we can come back years from now and in the coming years at the annual Wrocław Global Forum and say that we rose in common cause to face a new set of global challenges, not just in Ukraine, but importantly and most importantly there now. We must recognize, we must reinvigorate the Atlantic community along its like-minded global allies and friends to shape the future. If we do not stand up at this time, you can be certain that less benevolent forces or disorder will fill the vacuum, and that's the message I heard today. So tonight, we join with Poland in celebrating 25 years of democracy by honoring not only past triumphs of democracy, but also highlighting the courageous efforts of people and institutions in their struggle today. Key figures that continue to change the course of history for a better world. Since the inauguration of the Freedom Awards 6 years ago, the community of our honorees has grown across the globe. You'll see the list of them in your program. I am delighted that we have 3 previous honorees with us here tonight, and I would like to ask them to stand up together. Please hold your applause until I've said their names. Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski, Senator John McCain, and Carl Gershman of the National Endowment of Democracy. Please stand, gentlemen, so that we can applaud you. Tonight, 5 more individuals and organizations will join this community of freedom fighters. We will first tonight honor Miklós Németh, former Prime Minister of Hungary, for his guiding hand in Hungary's peaceful transition through the fall of communism in 1989. Were it not for your decisions, a lot of other things wouldn't have happened. Ron Freeman of the Atlantic Council Board will introduce you. Welcome, Prime Minister Németh. We'll recognize Estonian President Toomas Ilves for his lifelong dedication to a free, open, and democratic Estonia, integrating Estonia into the Euro-Atlantic community and using technology to enhance the free exchange of information to strengthen liberal societies. Senator Chris Murphy will introduce him. After the dinner break, we'll present an award to the Polish-American Freedom Foundation for seeking to advance democracy, civil society, economic development, and equal opportunity throughout Central and Eastern Europe. I was briefed this week on some of your most fascinating projects, and this is such a deserving award. It will be accepted by Polish diplomat Jerzy Koźmiński, who played such a historic role himself, chairman of the board of the Freedom Foundation, tireless defender of freedom, and we're very happy that former National Security Advisor, member of our International Advisory Board, Zbigniew Brzezinski, will introduce Jerzy Koźmiński for this award. We will also recognize Baroness Ashton, the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, and we'll recognize her for conceiving a peaceful resolution to the turbulent Serbian-Kosovo conflict. She is in the midst of issues right now that forced her to cancel her trip here yesterday. She sends her apologies. We'll transmit your congratulations and her award at another moment. We'll close the evening with a special Freedom Award to the people of Maidan, who since November 2013 did not back down from their dream of a free and democratic Ukraine. Two key voices of the Maidan will accept the award on their behalf. The singer and activist Ruslana, who also received our Humanitarian Leadership Award at the Atlantic Council a couple of months ago, and Katarina Kruk. You'll hear more about their story from the man who will introduce them, Foreign Minister Radek Sikorski. It's now my great pleasure to turn the stage to one of my most active board directors who leads a lot of our strategic thinking in the Atlantic Council, and he'll deliver a special greeting on behalf of the Atlantic Council's board. Former National Security Advisor Steve Hadley, who has not allowed me, because of his modesty, to give him a longer introduction. Thank you. Steve.
Thank you, Fred. Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Freedom Awards dinner on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Atlantic Council and our Chairman, John Huntsman. We've had a terrific first day, and tonight is an opportunity for celebration, sober reflection, and recommitment. Celebration, to celebrate the dramatic, historic extension of freedom among the peoples of Central and Eastern Europe. To celebrate the tough decisions that those countries made to institute democratic political reforms and market-based economic practices, and to celebrate the prosperity that this has brought to the people of this region. And few nations have done it better in this respect than Poland, and we salute the leaders and people of Poland for their accomplishments. Tonight, we also recognize, as Fred said, some extraordinary men and women who contributed to the progress that we celebrate. It's also time for sober reflection. The post-Cold War consensus that helped produce these gains is now challenged by Vladimir Putin, first in Georgia and now in Ukraine. Internally within Russia, and parallel to this effort to destabilize Ukraine, Putin has cracked down on the freedom of the Russian people. This is part of a dismal trend toward authoritarianism and away from freedom in several regions of the world. And that is why I was so pleased that yesterday the Atlantic Council sponsored the first democracy dialogue between Europeans and Americans. We sought to identify concrete steps to help civil society and concerned citizens peacefully advance the cause of freedom under conditions of repression and authoritarianism. It was a very productive session, and I hope it will become a permanent feature of this conference. And finally, it is an occasion for recommitment. There is no excuse or justifying what Vladimir Putin has done. But to some degree, we have given him the opportunity by flagging in our efforts to build a Europe based on our values and principles. The expansion of NATO and of the European Union that contributed so much to the success of the last 25 years has largely ceased, and we have not pursued other ways to help the countries to the east and to the south to achieve the freedom, democratic institutions, market economies, and stable societies that we enjoy. And we can do this without redividing Europe, isolating Russia, or ignoring the historical and economic bonds between the Russian people and the rest of Europe. And this will give hope to those Russians who want a democratic future for Russia after Putin. Our vision is a Europe whole, free, and at peace, in which Russia finds its peaceful place. We are in new circumstances and need a clear strategy to achieve this goal. So I would hope that next year, perhaps the day after the forum, we could have the first strategic dialogue between Americans and Europeans to refine our strategy for achieving this vision and to identify the concrete steps we need to take together. We must all recommit to this vision and the hard work required to achieve it, and then sustain that work over the long term. Success will not come easily, and it will not come quickly. To paraphrase Benjamin Franklin, you have your freedom, madam, if you can keep it. We have to show ourselves up to this challenge. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Excellency Ryszard Sznew, Ambassador of Poland to the United States. Szanowni Państwo, powitajmy Jego Ekscelencję Ryszarda Sznewa, ambasadora Polski w Stanach Zjednoczonych.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good evening. Dobry wieczór. I'm delighted to be back in Wrocław, and thank you very much, Global Forum, for giving me this opportunity. I see so many distinguished people here that to welcome all of them would take me probably an hour, but I cannot mention that the presence of my boss doesn't make me feel much better. I promised Fred Camp to be brief, and this was the only condition that he would invite me the next year, so I will. Dear friends, Wrocław tonight, is a capital of the transatlantic world. And I'm not surprised now that a couple of weeks ago, while traveling on a flight in the United States, my neighbor asked me where I'm from. And I said, I'm from Warsaw, Poland. And he replied, all right, how many hours drive is it from Wrocław? You can only imagine how I felt being from Warsaw, exactly. So congratulations, Atlantic Council and Polish Institute of International Relations. 5 years, it's not a long time. You are still very young. But looking at my daughter, Antonia, 5 years old, I see that being 5 years, you can be bright, smart, and creative. So congratulations, the Global Forum. I'm expected here to deliver some words on the Polish-American relations. But is it a better proof than an unprecedented sequence of visits that we enjoyed here in Poland from the United States? Twice, Secretary of State John Kerry. A visit of Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel. Vice President of the United States Joe Biden. And finally, the President of the closest ally of Poland, of the United States. We all enjoyed so much his visit in Warsaw, and all people in Poland will remember his words. Poland will never be alone again. Poland will never be alone again. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for those years. We all Polish people will felt it deeply in our heart. As in previous years, Global Forum will award this year very special people who have never ceased in their efforts to change our world for the better one. Congratulations to all of them. And let me say that this award gala is under special circumstances. We all remember that not that far from here, in Ukraine, people are still struggling to take lead and to decide the future of their own country. So I can only repeat the words of President Obama: Ukraine, you will not be alone. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Excellency Stephen Mull, Ambassador of the United States to Poland. Szanowni Państwo, powitajmy Jego Ekscelencję Stephena Mulla, ambasadora Stanów Zjednoczonych w Polsce.
Dobry wieczór wszystkim. Niestety, there's not much of my voice left after managing a visit of a president, but I've saved enough of it for this really special event tonight, which is such a great tradition and a milestone in the transatlantic relationship. Thanks very much to Minister Sikorski for his patronage of this event, to Fred Kemp and the board of directors for supporting it every year, and of course, my colleague, Richard Schnepp. It's been such an incredible week to be the American ambassador in Poland and to be able to join in celebrating the 25th anniversary of Poland's remarkable transition, a week during which President Obama affirmed strongly the sanctity of America's commitment to Europe, and President Komorowski vowed Poland would play a lead role in forging a stronger transatlantic relationship with the United States. The 25th anniversary is not just a time to celebrate the accomplishments of the past. It is also a time to think about the challenges of the present and the future, and how Poland, the region, and the transatlantic community can meet those challenges. It is an opportunity to renew our commitment to working together to maintain security, create jobs, economic growth, and ensure the vibrancy of our democratic societies. The Wroclaw Global Forum is the perfect place to consider and discuss those issues. We in the transatlantic community often say that we are bound together by our common values. We also believe deeply that those values, especially our devotion to freedom and democracy, are by no means unique to any single region. Instead, as history repeatedly shows, the desire to be free of tyranny and to have a voice is common to all humankind. Tonight's Freedom Awards recognize the extraordinary individuals and organizations who have courageously led the fight for freedom and democracy around the world, and who have proven that the values that bind us together in our transatlantic community also bind us in turn to the global community. Congratulations to the Atlantic Council and its partners for organizing another terrific event, especially my friend, Mayor Dukevich. I'm glad he's coming back to health, and for bringing all together such an incredibly distinguished group. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's my honor to please welcome Mr. Ron Freeman, member of the Supervisory Board, Sberbank, and Board Director of the Atlantic Council. Thank you very much.
Old men forget. yet all shall be forgot. These are Shakespeare's words. He put them in the mouth of King Henry V to remind his troops never to forget the victory on St. Crispin's Day. The next winner of the Atlantic Council Freedom Award gave us a date we must never forget. 10th September, 1989, fully 2 months before the Berlin Wall fell. His steely courage, his extraordinary political skill as Prime Minister of Hungary made 10th September 1989 the date the Iron Curtain finally fell at long last. Cut 3 rusting strands of barbed wire on the Hungary-Austria border, and that was it. By this extraordinary act, he delivered freedom and liberty to the many and endured personally and at length the curses of the few, those despots who would perpetuate the imprisonment of their fellow citizens as the cornerstone of a failed system of governance. He followed this tremendous feat with another one, less dramatic, but no less necessary. He illuminated the way forward for us all by joining the senior management of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the EBRD. There he guided the newly created bank's efforts to catalyze freedom with sharply focused, non-bureaucratic finance. He did it because he knew them by identifying safe and competent and trustworthy hands throughout the former Soviet Union who could put good money to great purpose. These actions of one brave man must never be forgotten. A man who knows that you have to keep cutting that wire again and again because freedom is never definitively won. It is my honor, my great honor, to introduce my dear friend, winner of the Atlantic Council Freedom Award, Prime Minister of Hungary, Miklos Nemeth.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. It is really my great honor and privilege to be here today and to be the recipient of this very prestigious award. 25 years ago, Poland and Hungary embarked on a new path. The peoples of these two countries, first in Poland, then a few months later on in Hungary, voted in favor of a multi-party system. It was realized by the majority that without capitalism and market economy, democracy could not be established. The citizens of Central and Eastern Europe, really struggling under the one-party yoke, longed for freedom and democracy. At the same time, the population of a divided Germany yearned to be reunited. In 1989, the unthinkable happened. We tore down the Iron Curtain by the end of that year's spring, and on the 10th of September, ignoring all protestations from the former East Germany, I made the difficult and very risky decision to open our borders to East German citizens desperate to make it across to their relatives and friends in the West. From that very moment, the Berlin Wall could have been bypassed through Hungary and has become irrelevant, falling down for all times 2 months later. In '89, the reunification of Europe began, and I am really proud to have played a small part of that process. The German writer Enzensberger once wrote that politics was the accompaniment to whatever would have happened anyway. While he may be right to some extent, there are times when strong leadership is essential. '89 was once such a historical episode when the decisions and actions of a few key political leaders, such as John Paul II, Mikhail Gorbachev, George Bush, and Helmut Kohl, ensured the reunification of a broken continent in a peaceful way. When today I look to the East and see what is happening in Ukraine, or when I look across the EU and witness the rise of arrogance, isolationism, I cannot help but think that the world is desperately in need of a strong and fair leadership. If we do not act and stand up to any kind of aggression, chauvinism, or coercion, we will face global crisis. Therefore, the transatlantic bond is more important than any time before. It is my hope that the current crop of politicians will have the resolve and courage to prevent the further fragmenting of our continent, and I am certain that the Atlantic Council will play its part in fostering the required leadership that we are so much lacking at this time. Thank you all once again for bestowing this great honor upon me by such a distinguished organization. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome United States Senator Chris Murphy. Panie I panowie, powitajmy senatora Stanów Zjednoczonych Chrisa Murphy'ego.
Good evening. As a United States Senator and a Polish American, I am proud to be here in Wrocław for this important moment in history. As we confront a historic crisis in Europe precipitated by Russia's annexation of Crimea and continued provocations in eastern Ukraine, it is appropriate to honor someone who has been on the front lines of the fight to assure that the sovereign citizens of Eastern Europe decide their fate and their destiny for themselves without outside influence. President Tuomas Ilves is serving his second term as president of Estonia. And thanks to his leadership, Estonia is an example of what can be achieved when countries are free to chart their own economic and political future. Estonia consistently ranks at or near the highest in Europe in terms of economic freedom, political rights, and press freedom. Maybe this isn't surprising, since President Ilves has devoted a good part of his life to the cause of free speech and open debate, having begun his career in the office of Radio Free Europe in Munich, where he became head of the Estonia desk. And as a computer programmer since age 13, President Ilves knows the value that interconnectivity adds to open democracy. So it's also no surprise that Estonia sets the standard in Europe and around the world for internet connectivity and cybersecurity. But while open debate and respect for the rule of law defines a thriving democracy, it cannot persist without adequate protection. That's why perhaps President Ilves' most significant contribution to personal and collective freedom has been his position as a vanguard in efforts to increase security for the Baltic region and for Eastern Europe generally. He constantly reminds his allies that a commitment to common values can't just be voiced, it has to be backed up with action. As President Ilves sets a strong example, his government is one of the few in NATO to meet its commitment of spending 2% of its GDP on defense. In America, we're proud of the contribution that we made to forming the consciousness of a young Toomas Ilves, and we are in awe of him today, as no one in Estonia better represents his country's reputation for punching above its weight. As a point of personal privilege, when I was first named chairman of the Europe Subcommittee on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I was told that one of the first people that I had to seek out for advice on both the challenges that Eastern Europe faces, but also the ways in which it can overcome these challenges, was through the advice and counsel of President Ilves. He granted me that audience, as I'm sure he has with hundreds of other young, new leaders in the transatlantic relationship. He's one of the strongest leaders in this alliance, and it is my distinct pleasure to present a Freedom Award to President Ilves for his significant contributions to enduring freedom and democracy in Europe.
Well, unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, actually, today, I've been averaging two speeches a day, so I'm going to be short and brief and quote other people. But first of all, I'd like to thank Senator Murphy for his kind words, and I must admit I'm quite humbled. Actually, I feel rather small. 5 years ago at the Atlantic Council Awards dinner, I was in Senator Murphy's position, and I gave the introduction to the winner of the award on the 20th anniversary of the fall of the wall. The recipient then was Václav Havel, who unfortunately couldn't show up because of his deteriorating health. So to be here today, I feel kind of... But times have changed, and the generation of Havels and Walesas and Oniskeviches and Geremeks, the men and women who stood up and dared challenge totalitarianism, are leaving the scene. My generation, really, we're the ones writing the commentaries in the margins. We're not risking it all. The center of the battle has moved eastward to Ukraine, where people are risking it, and where the outcome is still in doubt, just as it was in doubt when Solidarność and the Magic Lantern Theater and the singers in Estonia were risking their lives. But the motivation remains the same. It is not in doubt. Recently, Roger Berkowitz in American Interest wrote, in 1956, as Russian tanks bore down upon Hungary and the short-lived freedoms of the Hungarian Revolution, the director of the Hungarian news agency sent a telex to the world. As Milan Kundera reports in a 1984 essay in the New York Review of Books, this Hungarian newspaperman facing imminent death ended his dispatch with these words, "We are going to die for Hungary and for Europe." The lesson that Kundera draws is that the question of Europe, what Europe is and what it means for Europeans, has shifted from Western Europe to Central Europe. No one in London, he writes, would say, I am prepared to die for England and for Europe. And while Russian dissidents, well, especially these days, It is in the countries of Central Europe where the idea of Europe came to express a value and an ideal for which lovers of freedom would make the ultimate sacrifice. As Kundera writes, to die for one's country and for Europe, that is a phrase that could not be thought in Moscow or Leningrad. It is precisely the phrase that could be thought in Budapest or Warsaw. The center of Europe has moved, it seems, to Central Europe, a fact that puts the current Ukrainian controversy in context. Now that was in American interest to get a little from the left in The Guardian to make things bipartisan. Timothy Garton Nash wrote actually 5 years ago, and I quote, 20 years on, the question before us Europeans is this: can we recapture some of the strategic boldness and historical imagination of 1989? Or shall we now leave it to others to shape the world while we snuggle down, hobbit-like, in our national holes and pretend there are no giants yomping overhead? Unquote. Now, Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And so I gave a speech this morning on where we are and how things look. So let me close with a passage from Winston Churchill, not from any of his great writings later, but rather from a little-known book, The Aftermath, from 1929. I quote, a vast fatigue dominated collective action. Though every subversive element endeavored to assert itself, revolutionary rage, like every other form of psychic energy, burnt low. Through all its 5 acts, the drama has run its course. The light of history is switched off. The world stage dims. The actors shrivel. The chorus sinks. The war of the giants has ended. The quarrels of the pygmies has begun. I really hope that we first support the giants in Ukraine and that we don't succumb to being either hobbits or pygmies. Thank you.
Please welcome back to the stage Mr. Frederick Kemp. Zapraszamy ponownie na scenę pana Fryderyka Kemp.
Before we start the dinner break, which we're going to start now, I just want to say a couple of thanks. A couple of our guests may have to leave during the dinner break to make the inauguration tomorrow in Ukraine, and so I want to have a chance to thank them. First of all, before I thank Ambassador Mull, I just want you to know that I was talking to Minister Sikorsky and remarking on how that was a really, really sexy voice. It was very Kissinger-like, except for the accent. I want to thank, first of all, the Polish Institute for International Affairs, Prime Minister Bilecki, Marcin Zaborowski, Anna Zelenska-Rakowicz. It's wonderful to work with you. We enjoy it very much. Thank you so much. I'm very proud that this is an important year for the Atlantic Council in Poland. We're putting down deeper roots here. We've opened up our Warsaw office, and we are about to establish, as soon as we can get through the bureaucracy, the Atlantic Council in Europe Foundation. This will be a foundation for all our Europe work, but it will be based in Poland. I want to salute Maciej Watuski, our board member in Poland, who will be the chair of the supervisory board of the Atlantic Council in Europe Foundation. I want to salute Michał Kabosko, the director of our Warsaw office, who will be building it into an ever more ambitious project. And I want to thank Fran Burwell, Vice President of the Atlantic Council, who's overseeing this also. Thank you very much to all of you. I want to thank the U.S. delegation here. It's a long way from home. It's great. It makes such a difference that you're here. 3 U.S. senators. You've already heard us salute Senator McCain, one of the great freedom heroes of our country, and also Senator Murphy, the European Subcommittee Chair, and his colleague, the minority colleague, Senator Johnson. Thank you for you, and Congressman Murphy and Congressman Shimkus, thank you to you as well. Congressman Shimkus believes in transatlantic trade. He showed up here without his bags. I won't say what airline was responsible for that, but he's really helped, Mr. Mayor, the Wroclaw economy, and you can look at his clothing. It's really just first rate. So thank you to this delegation. I want to thank Kulczyk Investments, Jan Kulczyk and Jarek Szroka. Without your support, we wouldn't have been able to open our Warsaw office, so thank you so much to you. Let me salute our 2 co-chairs, U.S. Ambassador to Poland, Steve Mull, co-chairs for this evening, U.S. Ambassadors to Poland, Steve Mull, and Poland's Ambassador to the U.S., Richard Schnapp. Thank you for your opening comments and for your continued guidance on this initiative, but working with us throughout the year. And it would be wrong if I hadn't mentioned former Ambassador to Poland, Lee Feinstein, who is one of the 4 founders of this initiative, really put together the ideas in the beginning. So thanks to all of you. And then last, again, though I've saluted him once before, Mayor Dudkiewicz, the city of Wrocław, thank you to you. Enjoy your meals.